Ahí va a llegar el gol del Arsenal. Ozil. Marca Mesut Ozil.
Is Arsecast Extra.
Hello and welcome to another, well, I'm not quite sure what this is, whether it's an Arsecast Extra. I think it is. We had people who said it should be called the half-cast, the half-Arsecast, the Arsecast Extract. But, you know, given what happened last night, James, I think it would be remiss of me not to wish you a goodly morning. I'm now a robot. Sorry.
That was a thing of beauty. Yes, goodly morning to you too. Is this the goodliest draw of all time?
It could well be, couldn't it? I'm actually very tempted to do the rest of the podcast as a robot, just to see what people would think. But no, I think it might well be the goodliest draw that I've experienced in a long time. And I have to say, I haven't felt as excited about getting up at 6 o'clock in the morning and writing a blog about Arsenal for ages and ages. And I know we beat Manchester United a couple of weeks ago, but there was something about what happened last night and the way that it happened that was just maybe a little bit special. Maybe we're getting ahead of ourselves here, but to me it feels that way anyway, because, you know, we drew a game against Sheffield United the other day and we were all very disappointed and frustrated. We drew a game last night. It just shows you the context in which stuff happens is so important, isn't it, for how you feel about a game of football?
Yeah, I think maybe part of the reason it felt so good is I, at one point in the game in the first half, was absolutely ready to consign this match to history. You know, I think it tells you something about what my experiences have been as an Arsenal fan down the years, that when we went a goal and a man down, as far as I was concerned, the jig was up. It was game over. Yeah. I was ready to sort of almost, you know, switch off from the match. And the fact that we rescued anything from it feels like such progress from how we would usually collapse in those scenarios. And also, part of the reason I was so thrilled by it is because it was quite funny too. There was a funny side to it in terms of Chelsea, you know, having the extra man and not being able to make it count, and us, you know, plundering a couple of goals on the counter-attack. It was just, yeah, it was a thoroughly satisfying evening's work, and I came out of it, like you, excited to talk about it, excited to write about it, and also feeling this weird feeling of like, oh, I like some of these players.
I know what you mean. You know, in adversity, we've been a team that has struggled in the not too distant past, haven't we? You know, we've found it difficult when the chips are down or things go against us. We tend to, as we've said on the show in the past, we tend to crumble a bit. That wasn't the case last night, and I think that's a step forward. You're right to point out, you know, from a Chelsea point of view, the hilarity that comes at it from our point of view, because, you know, they're 26 minutes into a game, the opposition go down to 10 men. They're not necessarily famed for their resilience and their ability to cope with difficult situations. You fully would have expected, as a Chelsea fan, to turn the screw, to win the game pretty comfortably, and to twice be pegged back by this sort of ragtag bunch of players and youngsters and people playing out of position and everything else. That must be a head wrecker for them, which of course is gloriously funny and amusing to us.
Yeah, I mean, we had 2 shots in the game and we scored 2 goals.
Clinical.
Very clinical. That's the good thing about that. I don't wish to put a downer on it. You know, I think even before we went down to 10 men, it's not like we were playing particularly well, but we showed loads of character and loads of resilience, and I think that's why so many Arsenal fans were engaged by it and enjoyed it.
Yes, I think that's very true. So look, let's go at it from the start. I mean, the team selection, the only change from the game against Sheffield United was Hector Bellerin coming back into the team, which I guess might have raised a couple of eyebrows in the sense that, you know, he has been out for a little while. He's struggled with injury since picking up that cruciate thing. He's had a hamstring problem. Ainsley Maitland-Niles has done well in his absence, and you might think that Sheffield or Chelsea away is a tricky game to bring a guy back into, considering the physical demands that would be placed upon him. But in the end, it worked out very well. But anything else from the team selection that stood out for you?
Not really. I mean, obviously, of course, Socrates wasn't back, so we still had a slightly worrying central defensive partnership. With Bellerin, it did surprise me a little bit that he came straight back in. And, sometimes at half-time in a game or at a point during a game, you sort of compose a tweet and then think, I'm not going to tweet that, actually. Yeah. And I had composed a tweet at about half-time because I'd seen Willian absolutely fly past Bellerin on a couple of occasions and thought, I'm not sure. I wonder if this might be a bit soon for him. Yeah. I'm obviously very glad I didn't say that now, given how things turned out. But, it's clear he still has a little bit of a way to go to be what we hope from him, I think.
Yeah, but this would have been a big step forward for him because there were concerns, when he came back and he didn't look quite himself. He didn't look quite as dynamic. I think last night we saw a guy who is much fitter, much stronger. The time off, he's probably done a bit more rehab work. He did 90 minutes. He looked a bit gassed towards the end, but then that's true of most of the players, given that they played 90 minutes or, at least an hour, over an hour anyway, with 10 men. So I thought he came through that very well. And, I think just as a performance, when you're coming back from an injury, I think you need a game like that. And of course, he had a very tangible contribution towards the end, which we'll talk about in a bit. But in the early stages, I think two things stood out for me. One was that Chelsea pressed us very high and made it difficult for us to get the ball out, get the ball into midfield, which we really struggled to do. And I think about 15 minutes into the game, I just sent a little message to Andrew Allen saying, I'm a bit worried about David Luiz, because it just looked to me like the occasion was, if not quite getting to him, he was feeling it because, everyone says he's a very emotional guy. He's going back to his former club. He's getting booed every time he touches the ball. You could see that he really wanted to make an impact. There were some, long balls that he was spraying around, which never got anywhere near an Arsenal man. And just the sort of composure that he showed over the last number of weeks wasn't quite there. And it just felt to me a little bit like, this, the scenario, the circumstances of this game were a little bit on top of him.
Yeah, I think that's fair, and I think you're bang on to say that's to do with the opponent, the setting, the response he was getting from the crowd, and maybe he wasn't as assured as he has been. Now, granted, he was in no way helped by his central defensive partner, and Chelsea, as good as their pressing was, Ian Wright on the coverage I was watching pointed out at half-time how they would press Luiz really intensely and make sure he couldn't play the ball. But when it came to Mustafi, they were willing to stand off a little bit and sort of see what he did. And a couple of times he did fire the ball into a Chelsea player or, play it into space. So it was quite a concerted, coordinated press, and one that we struggled really with. We couldn't quite escape. A bit like the early period against Sheffield United. Obviously, what happened with Mustafi, though, to give them the lead was, pretty. I think I have run out of words. I think
I don't know what more there is to say. I don't know how many more times. I'm not here to, absolutely crucify the guy today or anything like it. I just don't see the point anymore, because I don't know how much more evidence we need that he should be playing football for a different football club, and the club knew that. The club knew that in the summer. They were trying to get rid of him. We understand there are difficulties in making transfers happen, particularly if a player doesn't want to go or doesn't want to go to one of the options that are available to him. But, in terms of squad building, in terms of depth at central, in the centre of our defence, we made a mistake by keeping him and making Mustafi somebody who we've had to become reliant on, as can happen during a season when, you pick up injuries, or you've got two sort of centre halves in their 30s, or you've got, a guy coming back from a cruciate ligament injury. I mean, it's a ridiculous mistake. It's, basic, it's careless, it's slack, it's just typical of him and what he does and what he's done countless times in the past for Arsenal. So, I don't know what more there is to say about him. I mean, even the fact that he played reasonably well after that in terms of, making headers, making blocks, making clearances. I'm not sure he was great with the ball, but, it sort of shows you what the problem is that, he's just a guy who at any moment can shoot you in the foot.
Yeah. And that doesn't absolve him really for me. I mean, fair play to him. I guess he recovered well from the mistake. But the thing about Mustafi is he will play okay for 89 minutes, but it's that one where he completely loses his head that can cost you a game.
Yeah, or your chance of winning a game. I mean, look, in the end of it, we came out with a 2-2 draw, and I think, I suspect that a lot of the tweets going around this morning, people who are feeling a bit sorry for Mustafi or saying, well, he did very well after the goal, would not be quite as kind had we lost that game and not taken anything from it, because ultimately, he put us in a very, very difficult position that we did not need to be put in.
I mean, I know he's kind of the golden boy at the moment, but do we have to query Mikel Arteta's decision to pick Mustafi?
I guess. I suppose the one thing we don't really know is how fit Holding is and how ready he is for 90 minutes. I suspect he might not be quite ready for 90 minutes yet. Maybe Arteta needed to fully experience Mustafi being Mustafi before he understood the very essence of Mustafi.
Sure, everyone thinks they can change him.
Yeah. I suspect that if he had the opportunity not to pick Mustafi, he would. Particularly given that after the first Chelsea game, he didn't pick Mustafi, not even in the squad for a couple of games, 3 or whatever amount of games it was. I don't think Mustafi even appeared in the squad. So I'm not sure that Arteta is blind to Mustafi's failings or potential failings. I just don't think he had any choice on the night than to pick him. Holding maybe, is there, if you get an injury, he can come on and do a job, but maybe not ready to start. That's the only rationale I can think of.
Yeah, well, fair enough, really. What about, so obviously Mustafi's pass is kind of ludicrous and self-destructive. Do you think Luiz could have done anything differently?
I think he probably just could have stayed on his feet and tried to block the shot. I think the emotion of the situation that he was placed in and the emotion that he was feeling overall led him to be a bit rash. It was a push. It was he denied a clear goal scoring opportunity. It's a red card. I know people talk about the double jeopardy rule or triple jeopardy rule, but it only applies if it's an accidental foul or if there's a genuine attempt to play the ball. I don't think there was on Luiz's part. I don't have any arguments with the red card whatsoever. I mean, did you see the Mustafi after he pushes Abraham over? Mustafi slides in and just clears the ball into the back of Abraham or into the back of Luiz. It's just an astonishing thing for him to do in those circumstances as well. So I don't have any issue with the red card. Do you?
Not really, no. I mean, as I said on Twitter, the real double jeopardy is that Mustafi stayed on, but he did improve from that point. I found myself watching the replay and going, come on, Luiz, just let the bloke score. In that position, you're better to go a goal down than a man down. But I think that's quite harsh, really, given how fast it's happening, given the sort of panic of the moment. I'm not sure too many players would have the sort of ability to step out of the situation and say, actually, I'm just going to let the guy stroll through.
No, I don't know that he had to let him stroll through. I think he could have maybe tried to make a block or maybe put some faith in his goalkeeper to try to make a save. I just don't think he had to.
Was quite weird as well, I felt. I mean, I think the goalkeeper actually does do that. So he comes out of his goal and then sort of pulls out of the challenge, as I recall it, because I think he has an awareness of, I'll probably go off if I bring him down here. Maybe. I mean, I guess Luiz, in the circumstances, what do we know about him? In the same way that we know about Mustafi, he's got these ricks in him and he's going to mess up. We know about Luiz, maybe he's not got the coolest head, and that is kind of who he is. And unfortunately, we saw that with the sending off.
Isn't there a strange sort of symmetry between this game and the previous game against Chelsea in that we were on top until they made a substitution. I think they brought Jorginho on at the Emirates, and that tactical change had a big impact on the rest of the game. I don't think Chelsea were as dominant as people might like to think, but certainly it brought them back into the game. Here we are, half an hour, 26 minutes, half an hour into this game, and us going down to 10 men had a similar kind of effect on our performance, because I felt we were better after we went down to 10 men. I think there was more organisation. We had to be more compact. We had to up our concentration levels. And Chelsea were never able to get on top of the situation. In some ways, it reminded me of what happened a few times when we under Unai Emery faced 10 men and were similarly troubled in trying to take advantage of that extra man.
Yeah, it was really interesting, and we just seemed to have a slightly more, conservative shape, but one that Chelsea really found difficult to break down. And in the first 20 minutes or so, I felt again that Lucas Torreira had looked a little bit isolated in the middle of the park, and when we compressed, that wasn't so much the case. We still had players who could spring and break in Martinelli and Pepe and Saka. And yeah, it did change the match. And I think really what changed the match as well was that at one stage, quite soon after sending off, Rob Holding was ready to come on. And by all accounts, the number that was on the board was Gabriel Martinelli's to come off. And I think that would have been a really odd call anyway, to be honest.
If at that point you were thinking about making the change, which is, I think most managers would probably make a change there in that they would put a recognised central defender on. If you had to take somebody off at that point, who would it have been?
Mesut Ozil.
Yeah, me too.
When they said Martinelli's about to come off, I was thinking about it from Arteta's perspective, and I was like, is he keeping Ozil on because he can keep the ball? And he's thinking the least tiring thing for us is to keep the ball. I can kind of see that argument, but Martinelli, even Pepe would have been off for me before Martinelli, just because the sheer work rate of the player. I mean, as those numbers at the end of the game showed, the extraordinary amount of sprints, I mean, almost double the amount of any other Arsenal player, the amount of sprints he produced in the game. I think that would have been a weird change, and thank goodness he didn't make it. And the reason he didn't make it actually is because we started to look more settled on the pitch. We just got into the game. We were ragged for a couple of minutes after the red card, and then we put Granit Xhaka back in at centre half, and suddenly we looked a little bit steadier. And I thought, okay, maybe he'll wait till half time, but we just sort of slightly grew as a force at that point.
I think there is something going on with Arteta and his substitutions, because even in the second half there was talk about, well, this guy's coming on, or this, he's going to make this change, etc., etc. I think he's still getting to grips with that side of the game. But what I thought was interesting, was his rationale for not bringing Holding on was because he didn't want to send that message to the team, which was basically, right, it's backs against the wall for an hour, you're going to sit there, you're going to get bombarded by Chelsea, and we're just going to soak up as much pressure as we can. Right, and probably that would have been the wrong move in terms of how the game would have gone. I think that's probably what Chelsea would have liked. But the other side of that is that he was able to look at what was happening on the pitch and recognise the fact that even with Xhaka, who's a central midfielder, playing at centre half, we did start to look more comfortable. We looked more front-footed even. I don't quite know how to explain it, but there was a sort of structure there that we settled into and felt more comfortable with than we did with 11 men. We're going to talk a little bit more about Xhaka in the second part of the show, but I thought that was an interesting thing to see from Arteta, this even if he is finding his way and trying to figure out how to make effective substitutions and when to make them, being able to spot what's going on the pitch is, that something positive is happening and you don't need to make the change. I think that's a good thing too.
Yeah, and I think the hallmark of Arteta's Arsenal thus far has been that they've wanted to dominate possession. They've wanted to dominate the ball. You go down to 10 men and suddenly that's not really possible. I mean, Chelsea had about 60% possession on the night. And, you're forced to play in a different way. And actually, Arsenal counter-attacked really quite effectively against Chelsea. It was kind of the sort of thing that Unai Emery tried to get us doing for quite a long time, but it just felt like his sides never really had the compactness, the organisation to make that work. But we did make it work at Stamford Bridge, and that was really encouraging. But yeah, I think it's the response of the players that was most pleasing. We're so used to seeing them sort of throw in the towel or crumble. How often have we talked about the crumbliness of Arsenal? And they weren't like that. They were resilient, and they looked like they believed they could get something, and that makes an enormous difference, I think.
Yes, I think you're right, and I think the attitude and the character and the spirit within the team was evident, right until the final whistle. And we'll talk about a couple of little incidents now. Obviously, they scored the penalty. We went in at half-time, a goal down. You would imagine that Arteta is, I would say relatively pleased with the response that he got from his players after the red card. So it's a case of like, let's have a bit more of the same, or a bit more from some of you. But Lampard must have torn into his players and looked for them to do more and look for them to take advantage of their extra man. And the fact that we were able to cope just as well, I think, in the second period. There was pressure, of course. There's pressure when you're facing a team at home and they've got an extra man. But, it didn't feel like we were absolutely punch drunk and being pulled from pillar to post or anything like it. He took Mesut Ozil off after 10 minutes. I think that was perhaps doing him a kindness rather than taking him off at halftime.
Yeah, I mean, it must have been in his mind to make a change, and Guendouzi came on for Ozil, and I thought Guendouzi had a really good impact in the game. I thought he really, really helped us in that regard. He made a lot of important tackles and some important fouls too. And Ozil, I mean, just hadn't really been in the match full stop. I think even when we had 11 men and once we went down to 10, it got even harder for him.
So it would be fair to say that the Arsenal goal was a bolt from the blue, if you like, a bolt from the red into the hearts of the blue, whatever you want to call it. They had a corner. Mustafi headed it away. And what Gabriel Martinelli did next is, I think it's obviously exciting. It's wonderful to watch a guy going the full length of the pitch. There was perhaps an element of good fortune in that, he took a heavy touch. And Kante slipped at just the right moment for him to go by him. But the control he has on the ball, it's never out of his control. He's moving at top speed. He's got defenders chasing him down. He's 18 years of age. He's playing away from home in a big London derby at Stamford Bridge against Chelsea. And you could understand why something might go wrong in those circumstances. But every part of what he did, particularly after he went past Kante, was perfect. The control, the touch, the pace, the finish. Genuinely an astonishing goal to witness. And I think it's the sort of goal that will well and truly catapult him into the reckoning or into the awareness of many football fans. We know him as Arsenal fans because we've watched him, but who else out there is really watching Arsenal in the EFL Cup and the Europa League? When you do it on that stage, you announce yourself, and I think he did that last night.
Yeah, and it's easy to say after the fact, but I had a feeling going into the game he might produce something special, just because when he does start, he invariably does score. I mean, he's been so effective in front of goal, and this is about as big a game as he's played for us, and he really did that well. I mean, if he'd run just from the halfway line, so if he'd just taken the ball off Kante, say, on the halfway line and sprinted half the length of the pitch and finished, we'd be talking about that as an incredibly composed, well-taken goal, and to a degree spectacular given the sprinting involved. I don't remember too many goals where players run from quite as deep as he does. I mean, he breaks out of the edge of his own penalty area. And to travel that distance, to keep your cool over that distance, to maintain the speed, the control, the composure, it is absolutely astonishing, really. And I actually have a recollection, and someone doubtless will remember and let us know, but I think in his first appearance for Arsenal in pre-season, there was a moment like that where he won the ball in his own half, sprinted away from the whole team, and I think he didn't finish it, actually. I think he just put it wide.
Yeah.
But anyway, I have a recollection of seeing that and being like, wow, this guy's got this explosive power and speed. And to see that produced at the highest level in the Premier League in a big game away from home, and the finish on the top, I really was blown away by it, to be honest with you. And the assist from Mustafi was a very slightly funny icing on the cake.
I think that's a very generous, very generous description of an assist. Credit for the header. It was a good header and he got it away. But it is funny how it might be viewed as an assist. I think you're right. There was a game in Denver where he did something like that, and I remember very vividly at the game in Charlotte against Fiorentina, there was a similar kind of situation, not quite the same length of run or what have you, but he drove through on goal with just the keeper to beat, and he put it wide. So obviously in the few months that he's been here, there's been some work done on his composure and his finishing and everything else. And this guy is not so much knocking on the manager's door when it comes to first team football as fucking kicking it off its hinges. When he's in the team now because Aubameyang is out, but when Aubameyang comes back, I don't think he should be the one to make way. I mean, I think we have to be realistic, and we have to understand that there will probably be some fluctuations in his form and his performance levels, but right now he's not the guy who goes out of the team when Aubameyang comes back.
I think if he's playing like he did last night, no, I don't think you can drop him. And I think you're right. We probably need to measure our expectations and accept that at that age, most players, I accept that Martinelli is clearly not most players, but most players do have fluctuations in form and will have peaks and troughs, but he's not in one of those troughs at the moment. He's flying. He's scoring goals. He looks so happy out there. Talk about composure. What about that celebration? I mean, that's about as composed as you get.
Have you seen the tweet, actually? If you look at the timeline of West End Tone, basically, someone in the crowd does the foldy arms thing, and Martinelli sees it and
does it back.
Reacts to it and does it back to him, which is great. So if you look at West Antone's timeline, I think there's a reply from someone who's got pictures of it in there. The reply is from at AP__76 Andy P, and he's got some pictures of it all going down. So that's great. That's quite a nice little aside to that goal.
Yeah, that is really nice. And I guess, that sort of synchronicity between fans and supporters is what we've really missed, and it's something Arteta's talked about, of wanting to emphasise that connection, and that's a good example of it coming back. Nice of N'Golo Kante as well to honour the time-honoured tradition of Chelsea players falling over to allow us to score.
Yes, thank you very much indeed. Shades of John Terry there against Van Persie. Do you know what? I watched, I think, was it Amy who posted the highlights of, Amy Lawrence posted the highlights of that 5-3 game. I'd forgotten how incredible that game was. Not just the fact that it was 5-3, but all the other chances and stuff that were missed and things that went down in that game. Incredible. So check out Amy's timeline for, a rewatch of that. It's well worth it. So look, Chelsea get a goal late on, and at that stage I thought, well, this is going to go down as like a plucky Arsenal performance. We can take the positives from it. I mean, look, I don't want to hammer the guy again, but Mustafi's got to take Abraham down inside the Chelsea half. Just block him off, take the foul, get organised, take your yellow card and get back into position. We talked about this in the first Chelsea game as well, where he just doesn't have that understanding of danger, or just doesn't want to be that player. I don't know what it is. I mean, if that was me, I'd just I'd take him out. I'd rugby tackle him, whatever it was.
He doesn't have a nose for it. He just doesn't see it coming, and which is strange because we can all see it coming a mile off. And I guess on the equaliser, you might have to say that Granit Xhaka, who had a very good game, he's not used to being the last line of defence, and potentially that affects the offside trap. But yeah, it was one of those where I was like, shit. Like,
I know.
At that point, 1-1 would have felt like a real victory, and you just sort of are deflated because with 10 men to come back into it with so little time left in the game, you've had one shot until whatever it is, the 85th minute, and you think, well, it's not going to happen, is it?
No, it's not. That's what you think. But
That's
of course,
what you think.
You're wrong. Because it did happen. And I thought it was quite interesting, the whole dynamic of their second goal. I thought Abraham potentially was interfering with play when he came back onto the field, was certainly offside when the ball was being played in. I thought you could make a reasonable case for him being in the eye line of Bernd Leno, at least as the ball came in. Maybe we switched off a little, maybe we were a little bit static defensively, but Abraham was injured. He went down. Arsenal played on, as we absolutely should have done in those circumstances. I'm delighted to see that, because there was a part of me waiting for one of the Arsenal players to kick the ball out of touch because Abraham was down. We've done it way too often in the past, and I hope, like, rule number 1 in Mikel Arteta's guidebook to how to be an Arsenal player is, when an opposition player is down injured, do not put the ball out. Let the referee stop the game. Let him do it. And I hope that's something he has drilled into them. So Abraham,
let's be clear as well. Chelsea had the opportunity to put it out.
Yeah, they did actually. Yeah, and they didn't. So, and I think it was actually from that passage of play we moved the ball across Torreira, I think, to Bellerin. Weirdly, for some reason, it was Abraham who was back in the Chelsea box trying to defend. Of course, he couldn't because he could barely stand up, let alone, jostle or jockey a man or move in a way which might prove difficult for Bellerin to deal with. So he steps inside, curls a left-footed shot. It's 2-2. And wow. I love that goal. I love that moment. I love what it meant. I love what it meant about the team and the way they were performing, and the character, the spirit, whatever you want to call it. It just felt big, didn't it? And for Hector as well to come back and score that equaliser. Not the first time he's done it against Chelsea as well.
Yeah, absolutely, and off his left foot as well, which I don't think anybody necessarily saw coming. But just a great moment. I mean, I can't remember the last Arsenal goal I celebrated quite as loudly as that. My wife came into the room wondering what had gone on, which, to be honest, she should have been able to work that out, really. I was watching football and then suddenly I was screaming. But,
it's either something really good or something really bad. One or the other.
That's true. Well, she had heard me screaming at Mustafi earlier, so she saw both sides of it. But yeah, I loved that moment, and it was richly deserved. And I know that Chelsea fans will probably feel otherwise, but I couldn't care less. And Arsenal, and Bellerin as well, deserved that moment, given what he's been through, the journey he's had. And I know we've seen him before in the first team, but this felt like the night that really started his comeback. Yeah. And I was delighted for him, wearing the captain's armband too, a captain's contribution. Still
a few minutes at the end of the game, which we had to see out, and there was some late corners, and there was, I was sitting there. They were showing the pictures of David Luiz looking at the game, having been sent off, and they were showing that on the screen, and Chelsea get a corner and then another late corner, and I could see what he was thinking in his head. It's like, oh, please don't please don't do this, which is exactly what I was thinking in my head as well. Because you have these this ability to envision something which is disastrous. But look, we dealt with it. We got a 2-2 draw. It's a draw that feels like a win. It's not a win. And obviously results under Mikel Arteta are improving incrementally, but I think in every other aspect of what we do and how we do it, you can see he's having a big impact on this squad and on this group of players. And, as I said in the blog today, I think if we keep going on this sort of trajectory, if we keep plugging away and keep playing the way we're playing, I think the results will catch up.
Yeah, and this is the right way round, really. And, you know, we're not getting all the points that we would like. I think there is a question over the degree to which that matters at this stage. I think what matters more is progress, and clearly there are signs of progress. And, you know, Martinelli's performance was outstanding. That moment was outstanding, but he wasn't alone. And there were a lot of young players in this team who really impressed me, and older players who perhaps I'd written off who impressed me too. So it was just a really great evening, and continues that feeling of me being excited for every coming Arsenal game.
Yeah. Okay, well, look, this is a sort of Arsecast Extra. We are going to take a break, but we're not going to take your questions because there are time constraints on us this morning, and we're doing our best to get a podcast out for you, a sort of ad hoc podcast, which we don't normally do on a Wednesday, but obviously this game demands something for you guys to listen to. So we are going to take a short little break here. We're going to come back with some more discussion on some of the individuals and the overall performance, what it might mean, right after this. Welcome back to this Arsecast halfcast. I can't say halfcast, halfcast, Arsecast extract, whatever it might be. It's difficult. But we have talked a lot about Gabriel Martinelli in part one and how excited we are about him and what he might bring. But I think there are a couple of other players who deserve some discussion and deserve some attention from last night, and I think Granit Xhaka is certainly one of them. We look at the young players, James, and we look at what Mikel Arteta might bring to the squad in terms of, you know, bringing them through, giving them chances, giving them opportunities and belief, and we've seen, you know, some of them really embrace what Arteta is bringing to the team. But I think when you look at the overall circumstances and you look at the context in which Arteta took over, the state of play, what had been going on with Granit Xhaka, what had happened, you know, he even in the very early weeks seemed to want to leave. The whole Hertha Berlin thing was going on. You know, his agent was talking about it. But, you know, if anyone has flourished under Mikel Arteta, it is Granit Xhaka. He was superb last night at centre half. Absolutely superb. Not just in terms of, you know, what he did defensively, but what he did on the ball. He was calm. He was assured. He read the game very well. There were moments I saw when he took charge of the centre of our defence. There was one moment in particular in the second half where Chelsea broke down their left-hand side, and Mustafi seemed the obvious candidate to go to the ball, but Xhaka took over, told Mustafi to drop back inside, went with the man down the side and made a good tackle to put the ball out for a throw and just to snuff the danger out and get us organised again. You know, I was so impressed with what he did last night. We can talk about the overall situation with him, but in terms of his performance, how did you view that?
Yeah, I was really struck by how good he was and how he looked like the senior central defender, despite the fact he was playing with a guy who's played there his whole career. Rob Holding, you know, that's his primary job, and yet Xhaka looked like the leader of that back four. And Arteta was glowing in his praise of him after the game, and I think a few weeks ago when he spoke very glowingly about him, there was a feeling of, is he just trying to win him round to keep him on? But last night, I think you believed it when he said everything I tell him to do, he does it. Xhaka looks like someone who, to me, looks relieved that he is now working with a coach who understands his strengths and his weaknesses, and who is able to provide him the structure and the support that means he's not quite so exposed. And, you know, I know everyone has their frustrations with Xhaka, but sometimes we look at players in this team and we go, well, maybe it's not their fault. Maybe their system doesn't get the best out of them. But, you know, I don't think sometimes we recognise the stress that Xhaka played under because he was kind of asked to do things that weren't necessarily well suited to him. And it feels a bit like we've unlocked a player slightly. Yes, it does. You know, when you consider a few weeks ago, people probably would have been okay with Xhaka moving on and just taking, even just taking the hit on that.
And now I think he's become an integral part of what Arteta is trying to do. It's difficult because you can't ignore the things that have come before and the difficulties that he's had and some of the moments that he's had. I do feel in some ways he has perhaps and was perhaps a lightning rod for things which weren't altogether his fault. Like he became the guy who was representative of the worst aspects of Unai Emery's football in a way, because he was one of the players who got exposed the most by it, which isn't to excuse him or to condone, the behaviour that happened earlier in the season. We've done that to death. But we now have a guy who looks happy. He looks confident. He's performing well in midfield. He's shown us that he can play at centre half. He might not like it, but I think, given his qualities, that it's a position which actually quite suits him. He's not, particularly in a team like this, and in the circumstances like last night, it was never going to be a case that Arsenal were going to push up and all of a sudden we're done by a ball over the top and you've got your centre halves racing back towards goal. That doesn't happen when you're down to 10 men, but it doesn't really happen under Arteta anyway. I'm not advocating a shift of position here or anything like that, but what I am saying is that that role actually quite suits him, because he can read the game pretty well from a deeper position without having to do it from a 360 basis. He's not looking all over his shoulder the whole time.
Exactly. It keeps everything in front of him, which is where he's happy. He's not happy on the turn. He's not happy, using his peripheries and having to sort of shift out of danger. And actually, what Arteta's been doing with him is almost pulling him back into that position. And I was struck last night thinking this was foreshadowed ever so slightly under Emery, when we had an injury crisis at fullback and Xhaka played a few games as a left back and actually seemed to benefit from it and looked okay there, because and now what's Arteta doing with him? He's often pulling him into that left-sided defensive space where he can be a bit of a playmaker. And if we're going to be without Luiz for a game, there is a really strong argument that the closest thing we have to Luiz as a central defender is probably Xhaka. But I kind of think that's by the by. I think the bigger story is his kind of rehabilitation. I'm not going to say he is rehabilitated. I mean, there was a great detail in Amy Lawrence's piece that kind of skipped a lot of people's attention, which is that against Crystal Palace, when Lacazette went off, he handed Xhaka the armband. And there was a kind of awkward moment of Xhaka sort of waving it towards Socrates like he didn't want to pop it on himself, and Socrates just said, put it on. And he put the armband on and he wore it for the final few minutes against Palace. And
I didn't notice that, actually.
No, not many people did, but it did happen. And actually, when he went over towards the fans at the end of the game, he took it off again before he arrived at the fans. And there was this kind of... It's fascinating, isn't it? There's this kind of duality of, in that moment, the players recognised him as a leader and were like, God, quick, put the armband on, you're in charge for now. But he still has that sense of penance and this idea that he knows what he did is wrong and it's not appropriate from a supporter's perspective.
Yeah, a little bit of self-awareness is no bad thing either, is it? And look... We're a team and a squad which is pretty light, and we can all see that central midfield is an area which requires some work, and I think that work will probably happen during the summer. But until then, if Arteta finds a way to get more out of Granit Xhaka and has him happy again and feeling confident, I think in these circumstances, that's to be applauded. I think we should... I'm not saying people have to or anything like that. They can feel how they feel about him, or they can feel how they feel about what happened with him and the captaincy. I still think it was a fairly multi-layered, multifaceted situation, which didn't really reflect well on anybody in the setup at that time. But maybe we just need to put that behind us now for the sake of what's left this season, and then see where we are in the summer.
Absolutely. And I think there's quite a few things going on in the squad where it looks like certain issues have been parked. You think maybe of the contract negotiations with the strikers or certainly Xhaka. But that's no bad thing. We have more time, we have more room, we probably have more budget to deal with these issues in the summer. And for now, Xhaka has kind of done everything he could possibly have done to win people back round. And I think last night was another big step for him in that regard.
Yeah. So let's talk about Bukayo Saka.
From Xhaka to Saka.
From Xhaka to Saka. I mean...
Kurza was going to be annoyed because... There's just... I mean, I just don't really think there's a need, to be honest with you.
No, I don't either. I mean, look, he's doing a great job. It's not his position. We know that. It's not doing him any harm. He's benefiting from playing some regular football. He's learning the game in a different position, which may well benefit him if he moves forward, at a later point in his career. Having that experience of what a left back requires might well be beneficial for him. I just don't see why people are looking at Saka as a problem, or left back as a place where we really, really, really need to go out and spend some money. Because Kolasinac is back in a couple of weeks. We do have Kieran Tierney. And if Saka was being pulled from pillar to post, if he was having a torrid time, if he wasn't able to cope, if he was being, rinsed by defenders time and time again, if he wasn't contributing in the attacking third, I would say, okay, we've got a major problem here and we do need to fix it. We don't. We don't have a major problem while he is capable of playing like this.
And these aren't cup games, they're not Europa games, these are Premier League games, and I think he looks very, very capable. And I loved him sort of battling for the ball in the corner in the final few minutes of the game, and as we talked about the other day, going shoulder to shoulder people, putting himself in the way of tackles. To take on that responsibility at that age, I mean, Arsenal's left side of Saka and Martinelli in the last two games has been one of the massive positives, and they're kids, really. They're teenagers. I just think he looks like someone who could play in a lot of positions, and I don't think that's a bad thing. Famously, that Ajax educational model involves people rotating and playing different roles and learning to understand the pitch from different perspectives. I just don't see it hurting him. And also, if he keeps developing in this fashion and becomes a great left back, I'm not saying that is what will happen, but that's absolutely fine with me. I sense a bit of resistance from some people to that idea, but I don't understand why. For any academy player to be getting game time in the first team and succeeding in that role is a massive success.
Yes. I couldn't agree with you more. Sometimes a door opens for a player in a position that he doesn't necessarily expect. And we sort of saw it with Ainsley Maitland-Niles over the last year, where we didn't have anyone else to play there. And he came in and all of a sudden he's got a load of appearances, a load of minutes, a load of development, a load of experience, which, even if he ultimately ends up somewhere else in his career, A, will be massively beneficial for him as a footballer, and B, probably really beneficial to us as a football club, because we now have a player who is worth an awful lot more than some guy who's just played a couple of EFL games or EFL Cup games or a couple of Europa League games, I'm not saying that's what's going to happen with Saka, but I just don't understand, like you, the resistance to seeing this young guy come in and play. An academy kid, this is an Arsenal boy since he was, he was really small. He is doing what every one of us would love to do, and that's come into the Arsenal team, gain experience, play really well. And if it's not the position he necessarily wants to play in, maybe he might find that this is the position that suits him, or that this is where, his future could lie. We're speculating, but he's only gone 18 in September. It's amazing how well he has come through this season. Amazing. For him to be able to play with that kind of consistency and confidence and reliability and intelligence at just barely 18 years of age, it's brilliant. I just don't see what the downside is, and I don't see what the downside is of keeping him in the team until the other two are fully fit, even if there are a couple of games or a couple of moments in games where that inexperience is exposed.
Yeah, and I think there were a couple early on last night where Chelsea played a diagonal over the top of him. I remember one instance anyway where he was probably caught a little bit in field. But, that can happen with any defender, and certainly with a young one who's kind of learning the position. But it's absolutely a gamble I'm willing to take in Saka's case, because there's so much I like about him. And obviously what Martinelli's doing is exceptional. But I think when you look at Saka's age and the consistency and quality of performances he's producing, I think that's pretty remarkable too. He might not have the same, sort of goals and assists tally, but it's still a hell of a feat. And I'm delighted for him, because he seems like a really nice kid. He seems really dedicated. It was interesting hearing him talk about playing at left back, and there was no sense of, well, it's not really where I want to play. He's just delighted to be getting those minutes in the team. Of course he is. He's 18 years old, playing Premier League football for Arsenal Football Club. Whether it's left back or left midfield, I don't think it's going to make the world of difference to him, to be honest with you.
So look, individual positives, but also real collective positives for me. I think, that this team we know has got some difficulties with winning games right now, but there are things you can take from performances which will make that, if not easier, more likely. And I think last night was one of those games. I feel like, that group of players must know themselves that they've had similar situations, or perhaps less taxing situations, which have gone much, much worse for them, in games. So to go to Chelsea, it's always difficult in the first place. If you came away with a 2-2 draw at Chelsea with 11 versus 11, you wouldn't necessarily be unhappy, with the result. If someone handed you that before the game, you'd probably say, okay, that's not a bad result, however the context of it. But to do it with 10 men, to twice come from behind, to react to a goal in the 84th minute, which could easily have killed the confidence or the belief in the team and in the players, to strike back within 2 or 3 minutes, I think it really does speak to something that Arteta is doing with the mindset and the determination and the willingness of this team not to give up.
Yeah, absolutely. I think they just have a belief and a conviction that we've not seen for some time. And, we talk about Unai Emery, but frankly, how many times in the latter years of Arsene Wenger's reign did we see teams go to places like Stamford Bridge and fold in adversity? And, they dug in last night. They kind of dug their heels in and refused to be beaten, and it was not a perfect performance. We've got a long way to go, but we're all encouraged by the signs that we see, and I just have the really strong sense that this group of players are responding to this manager, and that he's telling them things, they're hearing things, they're learning things, and that they believe that he can make them better.
That's exactly it, isn't it? That's exactly it. They're absolutely buying into what it is that he's asking of them, because you can't get that. You can't get what you got last night from players who don't believe. And there's more to it than just believing, of course. People believe in all kinds of shit, which isn't true. But, there's obviously an intelligence, a measure of clarity in terms of instruction and what it is that Arteta is asking them to do that they believe is now within their capabilities, which they didn't seem to have before.
Yeah, definitely. And I feel like they believe he can improve them collectively and as individuals. And it's interesting because credibility was one of the big questions over Arteta. A guy walks into a group of players who's never really managed a club.
Sounds like the start of a joke, actually.
Yeah. Are they going to buy that? But they have, and I think there are lots of reasons. I think the fact he's come from City, he's come with this sort of commendation from Guardiola, I think probably does do him a huge amount of credit. But crucially, what he's gone in there and what he's said has, landed with them, and they have taken it on board. And you can see that from here. The results might not be what we want, but your eyes tell you the truth, and your eyes tell you this team is improving.
It sure is. A guy walks into a group of players, Mustafi slide tackles him.
Yeah.
A guy walks into a group of players, and one says, "Why the long face?" And the other one says, "Get out of here, Ruud van Nistelrooy, you horse face prick." No.
Very nice.
Okay, sorry. I know you have to go and do other things. You've got to go do your other podcast.
And then we'll go to couples counselling.
Yeah. It'll all be very good. Well, look, thank you for being here as ever. Thank you to everybody for listening. Hope you enjoyed the show. We will have an Arsecast on Friday as well. So maybe a bit more fallout from this, a bit more to unpack from last night's game. And we'll look ahead, of course, to the Bournemouth game in the FA Cup on Monday. So until then... night. Oh, yeah. Monday night. Hang on. Monday night, FA Cup. Are we at home or not?
We're away. It's in Bournemouth. I mean, Bournemouth themselves, they did win last night, but they're in a real relegation scrap.
Yeah.
So I hope/think they won't be taking it particularly seriously.
Hope not, and hopefully we turn that off. We can make some
a little bit of robot, still
a little
lingering.
bit of robot, or a lot of robot. We can hopefully make progress into the next round of the FA Cup. So until it'll be Tuesday then, won't it, when we're doing an Arsecast Extra, because it's a Monday night game. So until then, folks, take it easy. Cheers.
Bye bye.